The candle flame trembled as the knife cut across Igor's palm. Blood dripped onto the white cloth laid on the wooden table, dark and final. Around him, in the half-lit cellar beneath an abandoned bathhouse, hardened men stood in silence. Their eyes were sharp, their faces scarred by years of violence, betrayal, and survival. A hushed voice broke the stillness. "Do you swear on blood and honor to live by the thieves' law?" Igor raised his wounded hand, his jaw clenched, his heart pounding. "I swear," he said. And in that moment, Igor Niaz became the new Vorvi Zakon. But the story of how a quiet, disciplined man ended up crowned as a criminal king did not begin in darkness. It began 20 years earlier, in a crumbling apartment on the outskirts of a provincial Russian town. Igor was 12 when his father died in a factory accident. His mother, once warm and strong, sank into grief and alcohol. Food became scarce. Electricity was cut off. Igor learned to steal bread before he learned to shave. He promised himself he would never be weak again. At 16, he joined a small street gang. Unlike the others, Igor didn't drink, didn't boast, didn't lose his temper. He listened. He watched. He planned. When fights broke out, he stepped in not with rage, but precision. Older criminals noticed him. One of them, a seasoned thief named Arkady, took him under his wing. Arkady taught him the code of the old thieves: loyalty, silence, respect for one's word. "Power isn't in fists," Arkady used to say. "It's in control." By 25, Igor had already spent 3 years in prison for armed robbery. Inside, he earned a reputation as someone who never snitched, never took sides lightly, and never betrayed a promise. He protected weaker inmates, punished informants, and kept peace between rival groups when violence threatened to explode. It was there he earned the nickname, Niaz, the Prince, not because he demanded it, but because others started calling him that. When he was released, the criminal world he returned to was chaotic. Old bosses were dead or imprisoned. Young, reckless men were fighting over territory, bringing unnecessary attention from the police. The syndicates were fracturing. Arkady had been killed in a hit gone wrong. Before dying, he had sent Igor a single message: "The old rules are dying. Someone must keep them alive." Igor didn't want power. He wanted order. He wanted stability. But power kept finding him. He mediated disputes between rival crews. He reorganized smuggling routes to reduce bloodshed. He banned drugs in neighborhoods where children played. He punished those who broke the code harshly but fairly. Slowly, reluctantly, he became the center of gravity in the underworld. Then came the challenge that nearly destroyed him. A ruthless warlord named Timur, Shark, began pushing into Igor's territory. Timur didn't respect the old laws. He dealt drugs openly, trafficked teenagers, and bribed police with ease. He sent Igor a message: "Submit or be erased." Igor refused. Within weeks, 2 of his closest allies were murdered. His safe house was burned down. His mother, now sober and trying to rebuild her life, was threatened. For the first time in years, Igor felt fear. Real fear. He considered fleeing the country. He considered surrendering territory to avoid a bloodbath. But Arkady's words echoed in his head. Someone must keep the rules alive. Instead of striking back blindly, Igor waited. He gathered evidence of Timur's crimes. He quietly fed information to rival gangs Timur had betrayed. He turned Timur's own men against him by exposing how Timur kept profits for himself. And when the moment came, it wasn't Igor who pulled the trigger. It was Timur's closest lieutenant. The war ended overnight. But victory came at a cost. Igor lost friends. He lost sleep. He lost the illusion that he could fix a broken world without becoming part of its darkness. When the elders of the criminal brotherhood summoned him to the secret gathering, he knew what they wanted. He also knew what it would take from him. Back in the cellar, after the oath was sworn, an old man stepped forward. "From this night on, you are Vorvi Zakon," he said. "Your life is no longer your own." Igor nodded. He felt no pride, only responsibility. In the months that followed, he enforced stricter rules. He banned human trafficking. He cut ties with politicians who demanded bribes. He punished his own men when they crossed lines. Some called him a traitor to the new criminal order. Others called him the last true king. But the final test came when his mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Doctors told him she had 6 months to live. For the first time since childhood, Igor felt helpless. He sat by her hospital bed in silence, holding her fragile hand. "You became a good man," she whispered. Tears burned his eyes. He wanted to tell her the truth. He wanted forgiveness. But he said nothing. One night, his men called. A massive shipment was under threat. Millions were at stake. Violence was inevitable if he didn't intervene. He looked at his sleeping mother, then at the phone. For the first time as Vorvi Zakon, he chose family over power. The deal collapsed. Rivals took advantage. He lost territory. Some of his own allies turned against him. But he stayed at his mother's side until her last breath. At her funeral, standing alone under grey skies, Igor understood something he had ignored all his life: strength isn't only in control. It's in sacrifice. Months later, battered but wiser, he rebuilt his network. Not through fear, but through trust. He refused easy money that came with blood. He focused on long-term stability. Slowly, those who had doubted him returned. Even his enemies began respecting his boundaries. Years passed. The criminal world changed again. Technology replaced old smuggling routes. New gangs rose and fell. But Igor Niaz remained, not as the most brutal boss, but as the most respected. One evening, sitting alone in a quiet apartment, Igor poured himself tea and looked out at the city lights. He thought of Arkady, of his mother, of the boy who once stole bread to survive. He had become a king in a world of thieves. But more importantly, he had remained human. And in a world that tried every day to turn him into a monster, that was his greatest victory. The candle flame had long gone out. The oath was over. But the true test of his honor continued every single day.